Hello, welcome to the program. Well, I'm Lana Kay, and it has come to my attention that we have a very, very important program right here in Boone County. The name of that program is CASA, C-A-S-A, Court Appointed Special Advocate for Children. And guess what? You, yes you, may be able to become one of those advocates. So without further ado, here is the director of that important program, Colleen Bohman. Welcome to the program, Colleen.
Thank you for having me.
So Colleen, tell us all about CASA for Children.
The mission of CASA, or Court Appointed Special Advocates, is we specially train community volunteers to advocate for abused, neglected, and dependent children in the Boone County family court system. The ultimate goal is to ensure that every child that comes through the system has a safe and permanent home. The program started in Boone County in 1991. We currently have 47 volunteers who are advocating for over 300 children in the family court system, so it's a lot of children. We do have about 30 to 40 children right now who do not have a CASA volunteer appointed to them because we do need more volunteers to advocate for the kids coming through the system. The CASA program started in 1977 when a Seattle court judge didn't feel like he had enough information for the cases that were in front of him. So he came up with the idea of starting a volunteer program where people came in and kind of looked at these cases and gave him more information as to what was in the best interest of the child. He just felt like he needed more of this information to make better decisions on these cases. So right now, there are 933 CASA programs in the nation. There are over 70,000 CASA volunteers serving over 240,000 children across the nation.
My goodness. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of children per volunteer, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So you need volunteers.
We do need volunteers.
You're looking for volunteers. Mm-hmm. So Colleen, how did you become involved with CASA?
I was a social worker for the state of Kentucky doing investigations on child abuse and neglect and learned about the CASA program through that.
Okay, then of course you oversee the program as the director.
Correct.
But when would you ever become involved, Colleen? Like what could be happening out there that you would become directly involved?
Any of the cases that the state social workers are working on that come through the court system, the family court judge then appoints a CASA volunteer to the cases. So it's all children who have either been abused, neglected, or are dependent that are coming through the family court system. The family court judge then appoints us to become involved.
I see. Okay, now the drug epidemic has caused many more children to be in peril. Tell us about that, our heroin problem, our drug problem here in northern Kentucky, which we've all been reading about in the newspaper.
Right. Our numbers have increased significantly in the past 2 years, and I would say probably 9 times out of 10, a case that comes through the system that I see that I'm appointing to volunteers, either one of the parents is a heroin addict or both. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these children are living with grandparents, and their grandparents are now taking care of them.
Okay, then. Now, so what kind of condition is this if both parents would be addicted, and then how do you find out? How would you know? How could you find out that may be happening?
Well, a lot of times everything is reported to the Cabinet for Health and Family Services.
Okay.
So people that are reporting these things are teachers, just everyday
maybe
citizens,
neighbors may notice.
Right. So anybody who sees that this may be occurring calls in to the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, and then they would investigate the case. If they substantiate that case and find that this is in fact happening, it would come through to the court system, where that we then become involved.
Okay. So we're looking for the goal too is now these volunteers come from all walks of life. We don't need any specific degrees or anything like that to be a volunteer. Tell us about what it takes to be a volunteer.
Okay, you're correct. Any community citizen who wants to become a volunteer, they just need to start the process by calling the CASA office. You have to be 21 years of age, pass background screenings. We do a criminal background check as well as a check to make sure that you haven't been involved with the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. And then what we would do at that point is bring you in for an interview and talk to you and make sure you're a good fit for the program. And then we would start you in a training class. The training consists of 30 hours of in-classroom training. So you're coming into the CASA office and learning about what it is to be a CASA volunteer. And then you also do 4 hours of court observation, so you can kind of see how the CASA volunteer works in the court system.
Sure.
And then once that's completed, you would be sworn in by the family court judge as a CASA volunteer.
So, not too difficult, really.
No.
Now, in some of the information that you gave me, CASA volunteers come from all walks of life. We said that, but I was very surprised that most of your volunteers are, 64% are employed in full or part-time jobs.
Correct.
That's amazing to me, and the majority tend to be professionals with 58% college or university graduates. Wow.
Yes.
So I guess that, they just really see this need, and they, are going to volunteer their time to help. The majority of the volunteers nationwide are women. I'm not surprised
Right,
about that. I
right.
can't say I can understand that very well. It's just something about a woman doesn't want children to be neglected or abused. And what can be happening? What denotes abuse? Tell us, what is abuse and neglect? Of course, they just come to school, maybe no coat.
Right.
What could be happening that this child could be in trouble?
When we talk about neglect, a majority of the things that we see that are considered neglect are dirty houses. And it has to be where a child really can't live in that house because it's so dirty.
Okay.
Where a parent let's use the heroin, for example.
Epidemic, sure.
Right. Maybe a parent is on heroin and they are sleeping a significant amount of the day, and that child isn't getting to school.
Okay.
Then that would be considered neglect.
Okay.
And then the abuse is more of what you would think of as abuse. So a child is being physically or sexually abused.
Right, you can see marks. Somebody
Correct.
sees marks, the teacher, the neighbor, somebody.
Yeah.
Okay, now tell us, how does the CASA volunteer, what would they do to investigate a case? How would they begin?
What happens is we receive the case in the CASA office, and then we would call that CASA volunteer, make sure that case is a good fit for them. So
Now are you going to evaluate the case first?
Yes, I would
And then
evaluate
you
first.
know your volunteers.
Correct.
So then you would try to place that case with a good fit,
Right.
as you just said. Okay, well
Exactly.
that's a very good way.
And then what we do, what the CASA volunteer does is they get all the information from the court system about what's going on with that child, and they will. Very first thing they do is assess the family. So
Okay.
they're talking to the child, talking to anyone that's involved with the child, teachers, therapists, parents, grandparents, anyone that's involved with that child. They're just gathering information. They'll talk to the state social workers, gather information from them. And then what they're doing is making recommendations to the court based on the information that they have received as to what's in the best interest of the child.
Okay. This would just be so great for anybody out there that has some time. This would just be such a great help. I was surprised. Children who are victims of abuse and neglect and become wards of the court or assigned CASA volunteers. The program is most common in juvenile and family court cases. Okay, so when they're a ward of the state, then who's got custody? Where are they living?
A majority of
Award.
the cases that we see that our CASA volunteers work with, they're living with relatives. When they say ward of the state, they're referring to children who are in the custody of the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, and those children are typically placed in foster care.
Okay, foster care. Okay, who goes to because your goal is, most CASA children have a better chance at being placed permanent once they have their advocate, correct?
Correct.
Okay, why is that? Because they're getting help with their court procedure?
Majority, if you look at national CASA statistics, it says that a child with a CASA volunteer spends less time in the foster care system. And they also are less likely to return to the system once they're involved with a CASA volunteer. What I have found is that CASA volunteers are carrying 1 to 2 cases at a time. state social workers are carrying about 60 to 90 cases. So when you have a CASA volunteer that's involved in the case, they're only carrying those 1 to 2 cases, which means they have more time to focus on that one family and to provide services to them, which in turn makes them not linger in the foster care system.
That is wonderful. So most only have 1 to 2 cases, maybe a few more cases, but they're not overwhelmed, and that's a good thing.
It is.
Okay,
It is.
and you don't let that happen.
No.
Because
No.
you realize that, so how many hours are they looking at usually?
Most of our volunteers, at the beginning of a case, you're going to spend about 10 hours probably, kind of get a month, gathering information. After that, it's about 10. I would say most of the time it's 10. Our volunteers are required to see the children where they're living once a month in the home. Now, most of our volunteers do it more often
I
than
would
just
think
once.
that. I would think that.
Right. So they do 14 hours, or every 14 days that most of our volunteers have contact. So that could be by phone. They could go to the school and visit the child, but they are required at least once a month to be in that child's home where they're living to make sure that they're in a safe environment.
And do they know when they're coming? Do they know when CASA's coming?
Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't.
And-
Most of the time, the volunteers would schedule an appointment, but if they're maybe suspicious that, let's say a parent has to have supervised visitation with their child, and maybe the CASA volunteer has heard that that's not being supervised, then they would go unannounced to try to see if that is occurring or not.
I see. So every case, sometimes they know, and sometimes it's best that they don't know so they can find out what's really going on there.
Correct.
Okay, so do lawyers and judges and the social caseworkers, do they support CASA? Do they, are they happy with this
Yes.
arrangement?
The family court judges that have CASA programs in their jurisdiction, they actually want the programs there and are the ones that have asked for those programs to be started.
Wow.
And the attorneys that we work with, there's what's called a guardian ad litem, so it's an attorney that is appointed to the child, and they're speaking kind of what are the child's wishes. And our goal is to what is in the best interest of the child. So there's a difference between the attorneys and us.
Yes,
In that.
but in your information that you gave me, you said that you want the children to have a say at court
Yes.
many
correct.
times. Now, why is that?
Because we
You really want to hear from them.
Right, and we want everyone to know that's involved in the case, this is what this child wants. Maybe that's not in their best interest, but we want them to be able to express what it is that they want,
That they have a voice.
that they have a voice.
That it's
Correct.
just not a bunch of grown-ups telling them. So what are these children's ages? What can be the ages of the children?
We work with children from newborn to 18 years of age.
From newborns to 18 years of age?
Correct.
Newborns? Who's got the newborns? Foster? Usually foster care?
Right. They can be with their parent. They can be in the foster care system, or they can be placed with a relative. The children that we're working with who are still remain with their parents, we're working to maintain that, and so that child does not have to be removed from
Oh,
the
that's
home.
so good. If possible, you try to keep them with the parents.
Correct.
Okay, let's take a look at some of these darling children. I think this is Alicia, and the caption said that her drug-addicted parents just sort of didn't pay any attention to her, and then she was sent to the group home, and they missed that she was very, very depressed. And of course, the CASA volunteer with the visits probably got her help for her depression.
Right.
Because this is the beauty of this program, is they have time with that child to see what are the problems. So, and who wouldn't be depressed living with two drug-addicted parents? And I know this heroin epidemic has just caused so much more on workload for you and so much more heartbreak for the children.
Right.
So here is a CASA volunteer playing, drawing, it looks like on the playground with a little child. So these children need so much help, and the court system is just inundated with cases. So, we're saying, Colleen is saying, and Lana Kay is saying, if you can possibly help. And this little boy here, first let me read this for a minute. To give a child a CASA, and they call the advocate a CASA, is to give them a voice. To give them a voice is to give them hope, and to give them hope is to give them the world. And that is such a great caption. And of course, here sits a little boy, pretty lonely looking, sitting on some steps there alone. So you can see by these pictures the importance of this great program and how you may be able to help out. So let's see now, Colleen. There were other things I wanted to ask you here. Are there other agencies or groups providing a similar service to CASA, would you say?
No, there are other children's advocacy programs out there that are doing great things. The difference between us and them is that we are appointed by the court system and are in the court system, working with and doing our advocacy actually in the system where the judge is listening to what we're saying and making decisions based off of that. So there are other programs, but not any in the court system.
Really? That is just CASA. Okay, and then you said judges have observed that CASA-advocated children also have a better chance of finding permanent homes. And you said because that advocate is there, they're more supported, it's just easier, right? For them to then be placed.
It is. And I think because the CASA volunteer is so much more, it's so involved in the case, that they're able to kind of identify where does that child need to be. Who is the best person for this child to be placed with, and how are they going to stay there long term if they can't reunify with their parents.
But you do at all costs try to get them back if possible.
Right.
And sometimes maybe these parents, especially with the heroin epidemic, they have to go through treatment, and then maybe if they return, to their home in a while, they could get the child back.
Correct.
And you would want that.
Right, yes.
Yeah, you always...
Yeah, our goal is always to return that child to their parent.
If at all possible.
If at all possible.
And so really, if you can put the heartbreak aside, I imagine that so many of them feel such a sense of satisfaction with this program. I'm talking about the CASAs.
Right.
They're feeling like, hey, I really helped. There's just nothing like helping someone else up the ladder.
Right, exactly. Sometimes it's a struggle because I think it's just, you see these kids and it is heartbreaking. But when you see that one of those children have permanency, or one of those children have returned to their parent and their life is so much better than what it was before, it's very rewarding for the volunteers.
I could just imagine that. Well, Colleen, we're almost out of time. Is there anything that you would like to add before we close to our viewers?
I just think that it is a very, very important organization.
It sure is.
And it's the most vulnerable citizens that we're working with. And they need an advocate, and we definitely need more advocates. So I hope that people will call.
We sure do. Well, Colleen, thank you for being with us, and thank you for being the director of this important program, and I admire you, Colleen.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you were with us today, and to you out there, CASA's contact information will follow, and if you have the time and can possibly volunteer, you will, to this important program, please do so. You'll find it so rewarding, and the children will be so appreciative, so I hope you can do it. And until next time, you be happy and keep smiling, and I'll see you soon.